Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kausji. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now this week on Analysis, we're discussing financial rights of low-income Muslim women, particularly post-divorce. Now, Muslim women from low-income groups in Selangor and the Federal Territories of Malaysia face significant challenges in asserting financial rights under Malaysian Sharia law, particularly concerning alimony, marital property, and post-divorce financial entitlements. The Selangor State Legislative Assembly was informed in 2024 that high cost of living is among factors contributing to the state having the highest national divorce rate among Muslims, with close to 9,000 divorce cases recorded among Muslim couples in 2021. Niaga Spotlight features findings from a new report by Sisters in Islam and Merdeka Center discussing strategies to ensure the effective enforcement of financial rights to support Muslim women in navigating the complexities of Sharia law in Malaysia. Amina Siddiqui, Communications Manager with Sisters in Islam SIS, and Dara Waheda, Advocacy, Legal Services and Research, ALSR Manager, Legal Manager with SIS, join me now live in the studios for this very timely discussion. A very good morning to the both of you. Thanks so much for making time. How are we doing?
We're doing fine. Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. So, Amina, perhaps we could just start it off with the groundbreaking new report that was just launched by SIS together with Merdeka Center. Tell me in summation, what was this undertaken for and why now at this specific juncture of time in 2025?
Okay, as you know, Sisters in Islam, we have a helpline called Telenisa, where we actually for the past 20 years, we have been collecting data and publishing data regarding divorces, because they call us regarding their divorce issues and so on to get legal help. So from there, we have identified that there is problems, a lot of problems these women are facing. So then we decided to have this study to see, but it's a very small study because it is only centered on the Federal Territories and Selangor. So there was about 124 Muslim women from the B40 group, and majority of the respondents were between the ages of 41 and 50 years old, followed by 31 to 40 years old. And what we found out was 49% of the respondents had filed for financial claims in the Sharia court, while 51 did not actually make any claims. Right. So the number of people not claiming, women not claiming, is higher than those claiming. And also, we found out that most of the respondents, the divorce point from what is at 13 years, after 13 years of marriage,
right?
So it's not like a one-year marriage, a short period.
These are breakdown of long-term relationships.
Long-term relationships. So that means children are involved as well.
Absolutely. So I think it's a really good way in which to set the ground for what we're going to be discussing. Dara, any insights that were actually taken away from the launch of this report earlier this week, and what were you really hearing from those who were in attendance as well as the key stakeholders?
Most of our attendees during our launch that day was from the ground roots, and these are from the Klang Valley, because most from the calls that we receive through the helpline that Amina just mentioned, Telenisa, were mostly from Klang Valley. That is why we had our survey there.
That's right, exactly. And I think, of course, it helps to try and set the tone for what results might be like and replicable across the country, because, of course, we start off with cost of living burdens being the highest in the Klang Valley. So from there, Amina, moving back into looking at the intersection of gender, religious expectations, and also socioeconomic status, and how is this shaping the financial rights and also financial autonomy for these specific subset of low-income Muslim women post-divorce?
So, actually, if you look at the whole context, right, it's a very deeply multifaceted issue.
That's right. Let's break it down.
Yeah, it's not just one aspect. When a woman decides to get divorced, for example, or a couple, there's so many things they take into consideration, but especially for women. One is societal expectations of gender related. Then you have expectations, religious frameworks. you know, in religion, it is not encouraged to get divorced. So they take that into consideration. They also have to take, you know, socio-economic constraints, because before this, they're double income. After this, they will be single income. And it's not just the mothers. I'm sure the fathers also have to go through all of this, any couple. So, but mothers primarily are the caregivers for
the direct
children.
Caregivers,
yes, direct
right.
caregivers. So mothers do have to take all of this into consideration. Like, in case they don't get anything, then any financial help, then how will they support their children? But even then, sometimes the situation is so untenable that they do have to go for divorce. And divorce rates are going up over the years. So this is not a problem that's going to go away. It's going to stay. So from our research, we know that 51% of these women did not actually pursue financial claims. So that is quite disturbing, because we have the system, we have the laws which actually guarantees them help, or, you know, to provide them with maintenance. But 51% of these women did not go through the claim, did not. Why? So that's a question to be answered. Why did not they go? And I'm sure Dara will be able to answer that. We also found out that the government has got a program, support program, like Bantuan Sokongan Keluarga, which is BSK.
Right.
61% of these women did not know it exists.
Right. And we'll also like to emphasize the fact that these are women who are from urban majority areas, right?
And so my thinking is, if these urban women, urban dwelling women who have more access to information are not aware of BSK, how about the rural counterparts?
Exactly.
So we don't know what's really going on there, right? And also, we only found out that only 27% of these women that we actually surveyed received any form of nafkah, which is financial maintenance. So you're talking about just a small number of 27% who received help. So how about the other women who the larger number of women who did not get any maintenance? So what kind of situation are they? How are they surviving if they're not getting government support and they're not getting financial help from their spouses, ex-spouses? Then how are these women suffering and, you know, and surviving? And what is the situation? So it is something that we, you know, and then there are, because these women are from the B40 segment, some of them, of course, they don't have that much of an education, so finding jobs is quite difficult.
Very true.
From some of them, I heard, a lot of them tend to be housewives. And then suddenly they're faced in this situation where they have no one to help them. And they have to, suddenly they're making curry puffs or, you know, things like that, trying to survive because they have no real help.
Very true.
Yes.
But at the same time, while you're trying to build up a small business as an entrepreneur in the informal sector, childcare becomes a huge issue.
Exactly.
So we'll definitely focus on that. Thank you very much for that, Amina, as a full introduction to the topic itself. Dara, may I go now into the extent to which existing Islamic family law frameworks in Selangor and Federal Territories. Let's talk about the enforcement of iddah, the waiting period, maintenance. How are they, in a sense, also inadvertently then perpetuating economic distress and dependence for impacted post-divorce Muslim women?
Okay. According to our survey or research that we done too, out of the 78 respondents who filed for their claims, only 10% of them had their application for iddah maintenance completed within 20 months.
I see. So it was also a timeline issue.
Yeah, prorated 20 months. That is how long some of our respondents took to claim their iddah. So 6% took 31 months to settle the hearing of their application for wife maintenance. So, and this is just to get the orders. We are not even talking about the enforcement of these orders yet. So the question here is, if it's taking 20 to 31 months just to get the orders, how are these women actually surviving, like Amina pointed out just now. So do bear in mind, and as we mentioned just now, most of these women were or are housewives.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So when it comes to the fact that it actually helps to perpetuate economic dependence, let's now look at perhaps some strategies or recommendations from CIS's side for how these laws could be reformed or better enforced in order to protect our women's rights.
Yeah. I would like to refer to the former Chief Judge of the Terengganu Sharia Court, Dato' Ismail's, what he said in our recent launch. The Islamic law is already well structured, but its implementation in court does not always align with the legal provisions that that are in the Sharia law system. I would take Section 47 of the Islamic Family Law Enactment, for example. It requires all claims either by agreement or proposal to be filed simultaneously. So, but in reality, the practice is that these claims are being filed separately. And it takes forever to settle.
Right, understood.
So this means more costs involved, and we're talking about money that these women does not have.
Exactly, because every filing, quite often, of course, it has to be done in person. That involves travel,
what's more to
expenses.
Complete the process.
Very true. So what are some of the grassroots stories, Dara, that CIS has been also hearing from women as part of this IDA application process and procedure?
Yeah, some of the filing application costs about just 50 ringgit. It's quite big to us. But to these grassroots women, it's just a matter to consider whether to put food on the table or to file for these applications. And some of them, one of the case that we heard, after filing that 50 ringgit, and the court come back to them and tell them that this is a wrong mode, or the filing was wrong, or that, and they have to refile, and another cost. So this is what is happening to the grassroots women, and for people who are not in that situation would not understand.
Some of the women, as Dara pointed out, it's only 50 ringgit, but it's not.
It may sound like a small amount, but for somebody who's from a lower income household earning anywhere between 1,000 ringgit to less than 4,000, right?
Yes. So sometimes the mothers are like, do I put food on the table for my child, or do I go and file this? So it is quite daunting for them, because especially if they're in the rural areas, to get to the court itself costs 50 ringgit or more. And to leave the child, childcare is expensive to leave the child with someone.
Very true.
You know, so they have to, so many things they have to take into consideration before they can even go to court.
Very true. And not even widening the landscape a little more. The fact that because of the increase in minimum wages, as of 1st of February this year, all childcare services have actually increased their costs by 15 to 30%.
Yes.
It further leaves lower income mothers, particularly those who might be divorced, with a huge decision to make.
Huge decision.
So, so basically, the government and the related authorities must find ways to implement systemic changes.
Systemic changes,
so
of
this
course.
Practice.
Yes, exactly. So perhaps it could even involve, in this day and age of everybody living online and on apps and with good digital access across backgrounds, especially financial segments, it might even be possible for the Sharia courts to come up with an app that could perhaps, speed through processes. Possibly so.
So if coming up with, even with the app, and you not educate people how to use it, it's no use.
Very true. You've got to have the financial literacy, the education, and the advocacy. It needs to come together. So because we're talking about some of the failures within the formalized financial support systems, Amina, I'd like to shift the focus into informal financial support systems. Let's talk a little bit about extended family networks and, of course, community-based philanthropy. We're talking about zakat, wakaf, and how this is also helping to be a little bit of a stopgap measure.
Actually, the informal financial support, most of the women, to be fair, during this period where they're waiting for the nafqa or the courts to settle, they actually 100% almost always rely on family support. Zakat and wakaf do play a crucial role here. They do manage to get, but it is always coming to them through word of mouth. The information comes to them through word of mouth.
That's right.
Yeah, so it is very, very informal. And very, in a sense, it is not so how do you say, it is not so structured. So it like very much depends on the woman to go out there and ask someone for help, and then maybe that person advises them, and then they get access to maybe some of this help, you know. But mostly it is very highly uneven.
Right.
You know,
it also depends on the extent of your own social networks,
yes,
right?
Yeah, and if you are isolated, because a lot of women tend to be isolated and alone with their children, so the difficulties these women go through, not just financially but mentally, is quite difficult to understand.
Exactly, but also one understands that when it comes to extended family networks, the help given, of course, genuine, but it might also be inconsistent,
yes,
and perhaps influenced by social expectations and the relationship which the divorced mother herself has with those who are the benefactors, right?
Zakat actually constituted nearly 47% of the aid received by these women.
Right.
So zakat does work. Significantly, yeah, as opposed to every other forms of help out there. So maybe because most women are familiar with zakat. You know, Muslim women were very familiar with zakat.
That's true.
So maybe they are aware of it, therefore they go seek it out in that sense. So zakat has been quite, in that sense, 47% of the aid they received is from zakat. So it does, but many struggle to access any form of additional support. They just don't know about it, or even simple things that women actually need, not just financial, but like counseling, mental health help, you know, or healthcare. As we go through our survey, we found out a lot of women struggling with healthcare, especially women with children who have special needs. So healthcare is very expensive to access for these women. So these are issues that 97% of these respondents did have bank accounts. However, some of them had barriers such as being blacklisted,
right,
bankrupt or declared bankrupt. So they couldn't benefit from any form of formal financial help.
Understood.
Yeah, because they don't have a bank account or they can't use a bank account. So to us, we go back to one of the solutions that we were discussing earlier, is about how do we solve this problem? And that we, at CIS, we have been pushing for this, advocating actually for this idea of setting up a federal level child support agency. So this would alleviate a lot of the issues that these women face. And we have been advocating for this for the past 20 years because it has worked in Australia. If you look at the model in Australia, it has worked where it alleviated this financial pains because the federal level agency is able to go after the errant parent, put in laws to adhere to, you know, a man or the spouse who does not pay maintenance. So there is a solution, maybe not a direct solution in that sense, but it is a solution, a viable solution that we do have to alleviate this
and also
problem.
one that is necessary as a measure because, of course, when it involves children and their right to access not only safe but equitably priced or even wholly subsidized by the federal state, right?
And being a federal level agency also, this proposed child support agency, federal government could control the nation.
They could set a huge precedent which actually is positively followed.
Islamic family law currently are being administered according to the state.
That's correct.
So there's 13 states, so there's 13 administration of Islamic family. But so if we have this child support agency in the federal level, so it will be controlled by the federal government for all.
And it would not just be for Muslim women, it is also for all non-Muslim women, for the population basically, general population. And it would help because I'm sure just Muslim women are not the only ones who face maintenance issue. I'm sure non-Muslim women are also facing it. But this is not so much for women, it is actually for the children and for what is their right. the father or the spouse who earns the most is supposed to provide maintenance. And this agency would actually allow, and it is doable because, for example, LHDN knows basically all our income status, where we work and all that, and they come after us.
Exactly.
And also EPF has all the details. So it's not like this data is not unavailable to the government.
And also filling a very critical gap in childcare infrastructure across the country.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for the conversation so far, Amina and Dara. We take a quick break now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Niaga Spotlight. Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight, still with me, Tamina Kausji, and today, of course, we are discussing the very interesting issue of financial rights of low-income Muslim women, particularly post-divorce, with Amina Siddiqui and Dara Waheda from Sisters in Islam, live in the studios with me. Right. Dara, now going back into the conversation, let's focus a little deeper on looking at how Malaysia's existing legal and social security systems can actually be reinforced so that they can actually address the specific financial challenges which are very clear to see from Sisters in Islam's recent report.
As I mentioned earlier, the law is already established.
Correct.
But its implementation is still far from satisfactory. So the Sharia court practice needs to be streamlined. So if we're talking about more judges are needed to be shorten time for the cases to be heard, so then the government needs to do something about it. So if procedure to file application are too complex, so simplify it. If the cost to file an application is unbearable, so lower it down. If the cost to legal representative is confusing, standardize it. There's no other way. Okay. The crux of the matter stems from husband not fulfilling their obligation in terms of paying maintenance. So how do we deal with this? The law needs to be strengthened, including penalizing husbands who default on maintenance payment. This has been going so long. Send them to prison or fine them.
We see this cyclically, of course, coming up in the news cycle, particularly in regards to high-profile cases, right? But at the same time, because of the cyclical nature, it clearly points to the fact that no satisfactory judicial outcome has been achieved.
We need to teach them a lesson for defaulting. So only then this issue will, I think, would somehow be solved a little bit. But if this obligation, if their obligation are properly fulfilled, all the financial challenges that you have mentioned, we hope will be resolved on their own. So what else can be done? The government should set up a federal levels child support agency that we mentioned just now to function as a collection agency for child maintenance orders, what we have discussed. And for example, through direct deduction of husbands' and fathers' salaries. A child support agency would ensure the child maintenance payment are enforced, reducing economic strain on single mothers. So this is what we have been talking about just now earlier. And some states on law, some states have provision in their Islamic family law enactments that allow the court to issue attachment orders. So requiring employers to pay any amount the defendant fails to pay to the person to whom they are obligated to. So the court can do it.
So it is in the hands of the court, and at the same time, perhaps breaking it down a little further for terms of pension plans and access to affordable housing. Let's zoom in on the access to affordable housing. From some of the grassroots stories which SIS has had experience with, what kind of ways of reimagining access to affordable housing can be put into place, particularly for low-income divorced Muslim women?
I will again go back to relooking at the whole system, the systematic changes that the court requires, right?
Right.
And from there also, again, the child support agency, the child will really help in that sense that they would be able to, you know, at least link these women to all the available under the government where they could get subsidized housing. Because what we are seeing, a lot of the women don't really know what's out there. They don't know what help they have.
What could be a good touch point, perhaps, Amina, for introducing women in general, Muslim women who are married? So it does not have to come to the point of a divorce whereby you find out what your financial rights would be, right? Where could it actually be integrated?
Okay, the integration, of course, when we talk about government, of course, it will be in the laws and systems and all that. But however, there's another part that is lacking. When we interviewed these women, we asked them where did they get the information from? Where's the majority of the information coming from? And would you believe it? Or yes, it's social media. So that means,
there you go, the power of social media.
Yeah. So they, so I feel that the government definitely has to do something about that. Then that means all the government agencies who deal with these issues, for example, BSK, should have a better social media presence.
Sure.
Because that is the way these women are actually accessing the information. Most of the information is either through social media predominantly, and then from word of mouth. So you are, in this the equation, we are missing the source of the information, which is by agencies who is actually giving out all this help, right? So this, it goes back that we have to, the agencies have to be digitally more savvy in that sense to convey the information that these women, they can also have more campaigns on TV, across the different media, so that these women do know that, okay, there is such an agency, or I can go. Because, sometimes when you're in a situation going through a divorce, your mindset is not there.
That's right. You're in survival mode already, right?
Yes.
Particularly if you've got young children to take care of.
Yes, you are going through a difficult period, because like earlier we mentioned, it's 13 years, most of them. It's not a short marriage, it's a 13-year marriage. It's quite a lifetime in that sense.
That's right.
And you have so many things you have acquired through the marriage. And now you are having to let go of all of this and, live your life alone with your children.
And at the same time, those 13 years most likely also involves homemaking for the vast majority of that time, and not informal employment either.
Yes. So if you are a housewife, and let's say your husband was very wealthy and you lived in a nice, comfortable house, and suddenly you get divorced and you don't have, the husband says, you can't live in my house.
Right.
Because this is my house. Maybe he bought it before marriage, and maybe she couldn't go claim through the courts. So imagine now she's a housewife, she has no means of having any, financial help. So she has to look for a place to stay. Some of them, lived experience, they just rent a room. A mother rents a room with her 2 or 3 children, just a room, that's all she could afford, based on the job that she was selling, I think, pisang goreng. That's all she could do, because she was always a housewife, and that's the only option she has.
Yeah, but in the Islamic legal system, when you get divorced, the wife should be given the matrimonial house to be stay in until the husband can go to her another house for her and the children to stay. So, but this isn't happening in the reality.
Once again, we're talking about what's available, that is actually predicated under Sharia law, but also the enforcement of that. What ideas do we have, perhaps, Dara, around how this, in particular, at least the most basic of allowances for a roof over the heads of the single low-income mothers and the children be guaranteed?
I think a couple of years ago, government has introduced this one scheme, like what they call it, Aisayang, for EPF to be paid.
Aisuri, that's correct.
Aisuri, yes.
An optional period.
For the wife. So this is a good way for keeping up for the wife and the children and their family. So, but I don't know what happened to it. But if we have this scheme in the Islamic legal system, it will be good. Yeah,
and perhaps making it something which is obligatory rather than opt-in, because making it opt-in or optional also leaves out those who are not part of that.
So having a good law without its implementation is such a waste.
Clearly, a very great reminder indeed. Amina, if you could perhaps just touch a little bit upon the long-term socio-economic disenfranchisement, because we're not only talking about what's happening immediately after a divorce, particularly for a low-income family, but what happens in the medium to long-term future.
Okay, so for the women themselves, they have health issues sometimes, including mental health, education. They are very, if they don't have basic education, then they are sometimes forced to try and get better educated to get better jobs. But it is also affecting
skills training.
Yeah, skills training. Yeah. So and of course their career prospects are also affected because they are a single mother with children, especially small children, and cost of child to send to child care is very expensive. So so these mothers really have very little prospects because they have to find jobs that allow them to take care of their children. Now this becomes even more difficult if a child is has special needs. So then the mother cannot again leave the child in anybody's care because not everybody can take care of a special needs child. So they are forced to find jobs that are very basic, you know, like pisang goreng, selling food and things like that. So the 39% of the respondents, right, from our survey found out that they were managing chronic health conditions. Such as diabetes and so on. And then adding to all of that is another layer of financial strain. So these women, a lot of them are in their mid-40s, right, as we found from the survey, and they already have chronic diseases, you know, and then they have to deal with financial strain, then they have to deal with children, especially special needs. So we are looking at a lot of the women, even though maybe they had some normal day jobs, right? But they also, 35% of the women took additional jobs, informal side jobs. They will sell homemade goods and anything they could just to make ends meet. So the strain on these women is triple-fold, you know. They are not well. So of course they have the cost of their medicine to buy and so on. Then they have children they need to take care of. And they have to find means of supporting these children. And themselves.
And the wider narrative, of course, is the feminization of life cycle and especially elderly poverty. Yes. Once these women, of course, move from their 40s into their 60s and beyond, right? Exactly. Thanks very much for that.
Another thing I just want to add, children's education plays a big role for them. 75% of the women express difficulties in securing sufficient financial support for their children. For education.
Exactly. So that is big because once again, you don't want for the life cycle to replicate by a multi-generational poverty either, right? Being cognizant of time, Dara, may we go into Malaysia's economic policies and what could be adjusted to better reflect the intersectionality when it comes to divorce, low-income Muslim women's experiences?
The government economic policy could be adjusted to better support women, including divorced women, by focusing on a few key areas. Okay, what I can say, firstly, ensuring equal pay and tackling employment discrimination through stronger labour laws, and better enforcement could help close income gaps. So a mandatory wage parity enforcement could also help to eliminate gender-based salary gaps. So secondly, by improving affordable and accessible childcare services would allow more women, regardless their marital status, to take part in the workforce. For example, government to give incentive to the employers who are willing to set up a childcare facilities at their workplace.
That's right.
Yeah. So it will a little bit lighten the burdens of these women when they go out to work.
And also not restrict their employment opportunities or to be considered for the role. Yeah,
correct. Thirdly, offering targeted programs for economic empowerment like vocational training and financial literacy. This is important for the women. So this would provide women with the skills and knowledge to succeed in the labour market.
Exactly. And I think it's really important to also stay very cognizant of the fact that the informal sector employment in Malaysia, almost 38% of that demographic in 2023 belong to women. And that's close to 700,000 individuals. And from those, naturally, predominantly many of them are also low-income women. There's a certain segment of them who would, of course, be divorced, low-income Muslim women. So it's really about remaining cognizant of the entire ecosystem, right? So in conclusion, perhaps, could I ask Amina about your perspectives about what would be the actionable strategies to focus on now that this report is out and moving forward for the rest of the year?
Okay, first of all, this is a very small number.
Sure.
But personally, or I think looking at the numbers, I think it's replicated across all the states.
Very indicative.
Very indicative, yes. That it's across. So this is not just a Selangor or Federal Territories problem. I think it's a nationwide problem. And it could be even worse for rural areas because we haven't really penetrated the rural areas. So it is very important that the government takes note of this survey and to see that there is a problem in our Sharia courts in this regard, especially for Muslim women. And not just, yes, we focus on B40, but this is across the board for women, you know. But it's just that the wealthier women have access to lawyers, legal representation, so they can maybe fight better. They have better financial means.
More confidence.
So, more confidence.
Exactly.
So when you're looking at these women, I think one of the most important things is education. We need to educate the women. I mean, you know, educate the women on financial management.
And really hone in on the strategies to actually approach and get that financial literacy to them. Thank you. Amina, Dara, it's been a very insightful conversation on looking at the financial rights of low-income Muslim women. Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight. We'll see you again next Friday with more economic analysis and insights. I'm Tamina Kaushi signing off for now. Here's to a productive week ahead.